how the book of Ecclesiastes begins in chapter 1. Smoke. Nothing but smoke. That's what the quester says. There's nothing to anything. It's all smoke. What's there to show for a lifetime of work? A lifetime of working your fingers to the bone. One generation goes its way, the next comes, but nothing changes. It's business as usual for old planet Earth. The sun comes up, and the sun goes down, then does it again and again, the same old round. The wind blows south. The wind blows north. Around and around and around it blows, blowing this way and blowing that, the whirling, erratic wind. And here's a question for you. All the rivers flow into the sea, but the sea never fills up. What's with that? Rivers keep flowing to the same old place, and then I'll start all over again and do it again. Everything's boring. Utterly boring. No one can find any meaning in it. Boring to the eye, boring to the ear. What was will be again. What happened will happen again. There's nothing new on this earth. Year after year of the same old thing. Does someone call out, hey, this is new? Don't get excited. It's the same old story. Nobody remembers what happened yesterday, and all those things that will happen tomorrow, nobody will remember them either. So don't count on being remembered. What do you think? I think this guy needs a little therapy, maybe. Consider it. Or get a prescription for something. They say the author is an old king, but it also sounds like a 15-year-old with an attitude. Boring to the eye, boring to the ear. Either way, it might sound like the rants of a pessimist or a realist, but I'm not sure. Perhaps they are simply the uncomfortable, honest reflections of someone who has seen it all. Honest questions we may dare not ask. I don't think it's a rant, but a human quest. What's the point of all our efforts, all our hard work and striving? So Ecclesiastes continues, call me the quester. I've been king over Israel and Jerusalem. I looked most carefully into everything, searched out all that is done on this earth. And let me tell you, there's not much to write home about. God hasn't made it easy for us. I've seen it all, and it's nothing but smoke. Smoke, 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 and spitting into the wind. Life's a corkscrew that can't be straightened. I said to myself, I know more, and I'm wiser than anyone before me. I've stockpiled wisdom and knowledge. However, what I've finally concluded is that so-called wisdom and knowledge are mindless and witless, nothing but spitting into the wind. You know what much learning earns you? Much trouble. Because the more you know, the more you hurt. Smoke, smoke, nothing but smoke. That's what the quester says. There's nothing to anything. It's all smoke. Now you may be familiar with these words in the book of Ecclesiastes. Vanity, vanity, it's all vanity. Or futility, absolute futility, everything is futile. Or utterly meaningless, nothing matters. We get the perfectly pointless point. And then he moves on to chapter 2. So I said to myself, let's go for it. Experiment with pleasure. Have a good time. But there was nothing to it but smoke. What do I think of the fun-filled life? My verdict on the pursuit of happiness? Who needs it? With the help of a bottle of wine and all the wisdom I could muster, I tried my level best to penetrate the absurdity of life. And oh, I did great things, built houses and planted vineyards and designed gardens and parks and planted a variety of fruit trees in them. I acquired large herds and flocks. I piled up silver and gold, loot from kings and kingdoms. I gathered a chorus of singers to entertain me with song. I had in my bed anyone I wanted. Oh, how I prospered. I left all my predecessors behind in the dust. Everything I wanted, I took. I never said no to myself. I sucked the marrow of pleasure out of every task, my reward to myself for a hard day's work. And then I took a good look at everything I'd done. Looked at all the sweat and the hard work, and I saw nothing but smoke. Smoke, 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 and spitting into the wind. There was nothing to any of it. Nothing. The book of Ecclesiastes is sometimes attributed to the great King Solomon, the son of King David, a man who had it all. 700 wives and 300 concubines he wanted for nothing. However, this was written about 700 years after Solomon, about 200 years before Christ. And one clue to that is that in the time of Solomon, people believed that wisdom would bring you a good life. The book of Proverbs is optimistic. But here we are now, 700 years later, and what did wisdom get us? Especially after the community had been carried off into exile in Babylon. Would wisdom have really made a difference? And so we return to chapter 2. And then I took a hard look at what's smart and what's stupid. I did see it's better to be smart than stupid, except that even though the smart ones see where they're going and the stupid ones grope in the dark, they're all the same in the end. One fate for us all, and that's it. When I realized that my fate's the same as the fool's, I had to ask myself, what's the bother with being wise? It's all smoke. Nothing but smoke. The smart and the stupid both disappear out of sight. And in a day or two, they're both forgotten. Yeah, both smart and stupid die. And that's it. And just when we think, reading along in this, you know what, this is just too dark. This is pointless. Where is he possibly going? Well, that is the moment when we're going, I think I've had enough. That's when he offers this beautiful wisdom, this insight so many of us find inspiring, as Pete Seeger wrote in the 60s. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, a time to reap. A time to kill, a time to heal. Da 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 da. A time for war and a time for peace. A time to embrace, and someone observed that this was the definition of COVID, a time to refrain from embracing. There is a time to gain, a time to lose, a time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. That's Pete Seeger's excellent addition to Ecclesiastes. Now, the Byrds recorded the song, and it became a hit. And did you know it was the #1 song in the Billboard Hot 100 in December 1965? The Bible. Ecclesiastes 3 is so popular because it's universal. It's true. It's wisdom from someone who has seen it all and had it all. And it's not a prescription that there should be a time to love and there should be a time to hate. It's a description of life as he has experienced it, that there are times, there have been times of love and hate and war and peace. But it's also wisdom for, don't worry. There is a time for everything under the sun. Don't worry. The times will turn. It gets better before it gets worse again. And there's nothing we can do about it but observe. And not panic. Don't stress. The quester in Ecclesiastes asks, in the end, does it really matter? Does it make a difference what anyone does? I've had a good look at what God has given us to do. Busy work mostly. True, God made everything beautiful in itself and in its time, but God's left us in the dark, so we never know what God is up to, whether God is coming or God is going. And I've decided that there's nothing better to do than go ahead and have a good time and get the most out of what we can from life. That's it. Eat, drink, make the most of your job. It's God's gift. I've concluded that whatever God does, that's the way it's going to be, always. God's done it, and that's it. So worship God simply in holiness. Whatever was is, whatever will be is. That's how it always is with God. And that's what I find is the core of Ecclesiastes. In the face of all the changing times, the smoke and the nothingness, the turns in life from gain to loss, to gain again, from building up and tearing down and building up before it's torn down again, there is one thing that does not change. There's only one thing that is eternal: God. And with all that, then what? So in chapter 5, the quester said, after looking at the way things are on this earth, here's what I've decided is the best way to live. Take care of yourself. Have a good time. Make the most of whatever job you have for as long as God gives you life. And that's about it. That's the human lot. And yes, we should make the most of what God gives, both the bounty and the capacity to enjoy it, accepting what's given and delighting in the work. It's God's gift. God deals out joy in the present, the now. Now, I want to take a little issue with the just take care of yourself part, and let's add a little Jesus to this. The loving our neighbor and all that stuff, the compassion and taking care of one another. That's closer to my philosophy of life than to eat, drink, and be merry. And yet I do accept his point that there is often very little we can do to change anything. Even though I believe that is how we have a meaningful life, is to change things for one another. But it's true that how he concludes chapter 6. It is useless to brood over how long we might have to live. And his concluding words from chapter 8. I've realized that if you keep your eyes open day and night without even blinking, you'd still never figure out the meaning of what God is doing on this earth. Search as hard as you like, and you're not going to make sense of it. No matter how smart you are, you won't get to the bottom of it. That's how the book of Ecclesiastes whimpers to the end. Big insight. You won't get to the bottom of it. Lots of words. 8 chapters of words that are just smoke, pointless, vanity. But not really. Ecclesiastes is powerful. It's always been one of my favorites because it speaks universal truth about the challenges of being human in an ever-changing world. And in the midst of his insistence that it's all pointless, it actually points us forward to pursue the only thing that doesn't change, the only thing that is truly eternal, someone on whom onto whom we may hold strong when everything else falls apart and the bottom falls out from beneath us. Only God is that unchanging foundation, our rock, and the Redeemer of all that has been and will be, both the very good and the terribly ugly. The quest is simple. Well, simple. God. So, after hearing all of this, the ups and the downs and the back and forth, what do you think is the message of Ecclesiastes for you today?